Hey, my friends, welcome to another episode of the Launch Sequence Podcast, your weekly stop for Star Citizen stuff. I didn't prepare that, so I didn't know what I was going to say. Today we're going to be looking at updates with Star Citizen, particularly engineering, tractor beams, and a little bit of building interiors, but big focus on engineering and tractor beams, as that's been kind of a lot of focus recently. And also, obviously, we're going back to the whole beam gameplay problem and why it's in Star Citizen. Beam Citizen. But we're also going to talk a little bit about some other space games today, Starfield and Spaceborne. So we're going to take some time, get caught up on the recent news and developments with that, and then dive into the meaty conversation. Today joining me is a Launch Sequence regular, TheAstroPub, owner of the Captain's Table, purveyor of office hours, and the launcher of space capsules on YouTube. Thanks for joining me, man.
Thank you for having me. As always, it's always nice to be here.
Yeah, always happy to have you on. How have you been?
Good. Just got off of spring break, so I had a nice long section. I had stress with parents coming in, but the fact that 318's kind of rough launch plus just wanted to take some time off was nice to be able to just not have to.
Nice, dude. Spring break. Where'd you go? Miami, Cancun?
Stayed home. I slept a lot, but yeah.
The workers' spring break.
Yes, I've got I'm at now like 8 or 9 weeks left to the end of June end of May is when I get done with school. So I have I'm quite literally counting down to, I think it's like 40. We have like 43, 44 days of school left, 50 or something, 54 days of like until the summer.
That's
just
not
straight up, but
that when you put it in days, it doesn't sound that long.
It isn't that long, really, because you'd be surprised how quickly those days go by.
Yeah. So I've heard that your method is that you use teaching in school to help you prepare for Star Citizen videos. Is this true?
It's 100% true. Yes, that's entirely true. It's
a great strategy.
Not the reverse at all. Yeah.
All right, man. We've got a couple of things to cover today. Actually, from what I've seen recently, you are yourself branching out a little bit in games a bit more, right? With streaming. What's that about? Are you canceling Star Citizen?
Yes, I'm done. I'm leaving Star Citizen. This is why I came on to the Launch Sequence podcast to announce this.
Big announcement.
No, I've been interested in more games. I used to do a lot more games other than Star Citizen, and I've always said I'm a big space fan. I like space and science fiction, so doing more games is always a good thing. And I especially when we have moments like this in 318, where some people can literally not play the game, or they have the big long breaks of just like, I got nothing to do. I'm not going to play the game for 3 months while they update the game, because I just don't have any interest until X, Y, or Z is added.
Yeah.
Having, playing games like Deep Rock Galactic, which has been around for a very long time. And I've known the devs.
Rockin' Stone, brother.
Rockin' Stone.
Yeah.
There's a story. I don't know if I've said it before to you, but this is actually a gift from the devs because I helped them demo the game for the first time live.
Wow.
I was one of there was, I think, 4 devs were there. And 3 of them were demonstrating they needed a fourth, and I stepped in to help them out during a live stream to play one of the characters.
Was that like a
scout?
Did you know them? Is that why, or you just happened to be in the right place?
I happened to be there, and I was talking with the devs, and I was probably the most experienced streamer at the location. There was a lot of people who were there who were locals who were streaming because it was at GDC in San Francisco.
Oh, okay.
So there were streamers there but there weren't a lot of like partnered streamers and that kind of such. And I was a partnered streamer, and every time I looked around and I talked to people, like, oh yeah, I got an average of like at the time like 70 or 80 people watching me on a regular basis. And so every developer was like, hello, would you like to try my game?
Well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was at a party. It wasn't actually at GDC, but it was nice to do that. So as thank you, they sent me Deep Rock Galactic mug, and it had the rock candy in it too. So I've had this for a while.
It's a good mug. I'd keep that mug.
Yeah, but I like games like that, and we have so many other new games coming out that are like great for people to try out, because I think sometimes people need perspective as well about how hard it is to do a game like Star Citizen, and how rare it is to see. So playing games that are like, hey, this is a different experience, but also not necessarily the same experience.
Yeah. I've been every once in a while. I actually got Hard Space Shipbreaker on my Xbox, which has turned into one of the best like living room relaxation games I can find. It's so much fun to play. I don't get to play it much, but like that is one that really captures the immersion of space without needing you to go more than like 10 meters away from your starting point. It's a really impressive game.
Yeah.
But today, we are on the. I would say we're at like a point where there are some pretty interesting developments going on in space games in general. Most recently, Spaceborne has been making waves. Now, I don't know anything really about this game. I think I've seen one trailer, heard a little bit about it, read some YouTube comments, and I would like to try it out. But why don't you tell us a little bit about it? Do you know about it? Is this?
I do.
Okay.
I haven't fully. I haven't played a lot of it because I've only just got it. So there's two. There's Spaceborne 1, and now there's Spaceborne 2.
Okay.
Yeah, Spaceborne 2 is the one that was just released in early access. Now, I'm going to caveat this. One person is making this. It's a one-man show. So it's really impressive for a one-man show. But keep that in mind that this is not Star Citizen with 1,000 developers. This is not, Elite Dangerous with a professional team of experienced developers, or this is one dude and maybe a handful of other people who's helped out. I don't know this dude's experience. He may be very experienced veteran. He probably is with all the stuff that's happened, stuff he's done. But it's there's only so much you can go through that.
Yeah.
But Spaceborne is a single player, expansive multi-system space experience. You have ground fights, you can get FPS fights. I think it's mostly third person perspective. You have space fights. You have like larger larger capital ship fights. You can form your own faction. There are dozens of other factions and species and you can gain rep with them, with the other groups. You can hire crew members and get like your own party together, like a Mass Effect, or you have companions who come around with you and do stuff. It is very, very cool. Like if I just listed off all of the things that are there, people would be like, this sounds like the perfect game. And it is.
It does.
Pretty cool. It is pretty cool. But it's a one-man development team in early access. So there are lots of bugs. It's sometimes can glitch out. And it's really rough. The UI is it takes getting used to.
See, but I'm trying to find better UI when I leave Star Citizen.
Yeah, that's the thing. I would honestly, when I first started playing it, I'm like, this is less intuitive than Star Citizen, and like that's saying something. So it's not Starfield, right? It's not Elite Dangerous solo mode. It's not those sorts of the experience that a lot of people are hoping for. But if you're looking for a cool independent game that's in the vein of something like the X series, but with more depth, which is hard to say, not super more in depth, because the X series has got a huge complex web of like trading and stuff, but it has more stuff to do. Like, go on the ground, go fight people with your jump packs and your guns and stuff.
So it's kind of like X4 mixed with like a little bit of maybe No Man's Sky or something.
Yeah, I would say, X4 with a little bit of No Man's Sky sort of thing is a good way of putting it. It is, I think it's an indie version of Starfield, if you can put it that way. It's a huge, expansive universe, but it's not like a super in-depth, like super polished story gameplay experience. It's just more of a sandbox.
Right.
It has a bit of a story to it, but it's mostly just a sandbox. So.
Okay, cool. Well, it sounds interesting. Sounds like a good single player to sink some time into. Have they said anything about maybe expanding the team after early access as they do more marketing and like maybe get more money, or nothing like that you've heard?
I haven't heard anything like that, but it's $15. So it's hard to go wrong with a $15 game in early access.
Yeah,
that's
especially when
going
that
to get
sounds
expensive.
that big.
Yeah. So
Wow. Okay, I'll have to check that out.
It's worth the money. It's worth the money to check out. At least just watch a couple of gameplay, especially for those people watching. Watch a few gameplay videos. There's a few reviews. There's one like 45-minute long one done by ESO. The YouTuber does a lot of Starfield or just like Fallout and Elder Scrolls content. They do a really good job of kind of breaking down all the different parts. So watch that, and then if you have $15 laying around on your couch, pull it out and pay for it. It's worth at least trying it. And then if you don't like it, I think you can return it pretty quickly as long as you do it in the first couple hours. But cool. Who knows? You might enjoy it. Like it's that kind of. I would definitely recommend it to at least try.
I'm definitely gonna check it out at some point. Sounds cool. But the other single player space game that weirdly gets compared to, or rather weirdly gets called a possible killer of Star Citizen, Starfield, recently finally kind of possibly announced their actual release date, and also has given us some good details on gameplay and stuff coming up. I'm really excited for this game. Deep stories, deep characters, Bethesda polished, rather. It's like it's just AAA. Yeah, it is relatively polished, coming from Star Citizen at least. Sort of experience is something I've been waiting for such a long time. I mean, Mass Effect Andromeda, Outer Worlds didn't really connect in terms of scale. I think Outer Worlds was a great game, but like the scale and the expansiveness that you're looking for in like a space opera story just wasn't there. And I think this is going to be a really fun one. But what are your thoughts on it so far?
We're starting to actually see some like discussions of gameplay and the stuff we've seen so far, and like the you can pull out a lot of the details, and we'll see more in I think June, like June 19th. They're going to be doing a big Starfield Expo where they're going to talk about all of the stuff. But it is really interesting in terms of what they're trying to do, because it's important to remember that, and this is something you've said before, it's not a Star Citizen killer because it's not attempting to be Star Citizen. It's attempting to be Starfield. It's attempting to be its own thing. And I don't like the connotation that people have been saying, oh, it's just Skyrim in space. It's like, I don't think that's right. It's like how Fallout is not just Skyrim with guns. It's similar in terms of the experience, but I don't think anyone would call Dragon Age fantasy Mass Effect. It's not like, there's similar like themes because it's made by the same developers, so they're going to talk about something similar, but they're very different games and they approach it from the different ways. And I think Starfield is that kind of stuff.
And even then, it seems like Todd really likes to focus on the older games, Morrowind and Daggerfall and Oblivion, when he's talking about like the design decisions they make and the persuasion and stuff like that.
Yeah, let me give you some examples right here, because this is actually the cool part. So you have traits which you can get when you collect characters. So similar like the Fallout kind of experience. But the difference of these traits is they're all background information. If you've played a tabletop RPG or a typical like old school RPG where you can take like a background trait, which may have a buff and a disadvantage at the same time, it's something similar. So here's a couple that I found in an article that's actually from gameplay footage. One is called Dream Home. You own a luxurious customizable house on a peaceful planet. Unfortunately, it comes with a 50,000 credit mortgage with Galbank that has to be paid weekly. So that's an interesting idea. Like, you can start off with a home on a peaceful world, but you also start off in debt. So you have to pay that off weekly. Another one's hero worshipped. You've earned the attention of an annoying, adoring fan who will show up randomly and jabber at you incessantly. On the plus side, they'll give you gifts. So that's kind of like a nice little like callback to the adoring fan from Oblivion. But like that's who you could take that. It gives you a benefit. He'll give you gifts. but he'll also run around and be like, hey, and maybe even block you in the middle of combat, that kind of stuff. And the last one they have listed here is kids stuff. Your parents are alive and well, and you can visit them at their home. But 10% of all of your money you earn is deducted automatically and sent to them. Like, it gives some gameplay relevance, but it's mostly just a nice little background story. And it might have a little, like
I'm looking out for my parents. But it's like, I all of those things are like, I guess maybe except for the gift one, like the parents and the home thing clearly have value that they're going to place on it, right? So we don't even know how valuable those types of things are in the game. But it sounds fun. It's cool that they're like physical parts of the game and not just some skill or number.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that's what they've been kind of emphasizing, is that a lot of the gameplay is going to be very similar Bethesda gameplay we've seen before in terms of the refinedness. Like there's a lot of things you could say about Fallout 4, but I've yet to see someone who says Fallout 4 had worse combat gameplay than previous Fallout titles, because Bethesda is not really known for their how fine-tuned their combat systems are.
Yeah.
But they've gotten better. Skyrim was better than Oblivion, which was better than Morrowind, and so on and so forth. And so I fully expect the combat gameplay to be at the same standard we've seen before. But they seem to be really, really leaning into the sandbox open world classic RPG style with the Bethesda flair. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see the game feel more like a Morrowind than it does feel like a Skyrim. So,
and I like that idea of, they obviously, they've gone for 1,000 planets, which is crazy. And I think everybody who hears that number knows that they're going to be fairly barren, because you just can't make 1,000 planets and make them have a bunch of stuff on them. We don't know how exactly it's going to work with the exploration of those, but it's nice that with the Bethesda game, you're going to have an in-depth story, good characters, a fun dialogue system. You'll be able to work on some skills, like learn a skill and then actually do it to make it work better, and take all this RPG kind of stuff and do that. Or you can completely ignore all that and just go out and explore and fly around, customize a spaceship, build an outpost, and live in space. Like, it is sounding like a very, very wide-reaching single-player space game, like we have not had possibly ever. I don't know. I'm really looking forward to it. And it sounds like Microsoft is making this a tentpole game for them going forward. Like, this sounds like it could be taking the reins over from something like, I don't want to say Halo because it's not the same class, but they don't really have a standout game right now. They don't have like a game that they can put forward in all their advertisement. I feel like Starfield could be that game.
Yeah, it feels like is the thing that, like, and to bring back Star Citizen a little bit with this one, that feels like what Freelancer could have been. When what Chris Roberts wanted Freelancer to be as a single player experience, it sounds very similar to that. I wouldn't say it's as in depth as Freelancer, but it's more geared to a mass audience, which is perfect for Microsoft, who's been struggling to find an actual game to define them since Halo's kind of just petered out and kind of. There's more other games like the Senua's Sacrifice, or the Senua Saga. Forza,
big but that's a car game. You can't use that as your.
It's hard to, So it'd be interesting.
I think I really do hope that they do a good job with it, because they need a win with like you said, the way that Halo's been going. It's just. Microsoft's been hurting. So I think this is looking like a good sort of mass marketable game, casual space experience that, let's be honest, is going to make everything better for other space games if it's successful. Yeah.
People, I've always, you and I both heard such and such game's going to kill Star Citizen. But the reality is that, and they even talked about this on Star Citizen Live, is that like the devs play other games. And I guarantee you, actually, I know there are devs who are looking forward to Starfield when it comes out, because they want to play it. They want to see what it's like. Yeah. Because they're gamers too. And I can almost guarantee you that there are people on the Bethesda team who are playing Star Citizen right now and are looking forward to Squadron 42 and stuff like that, because it's that kind of industry. People do that all the time.
It's actually relatively easy to not be crazy about the competition of your favorite product.
Yeah, because
tell that to all the
reality,
Xbox and PlayStation people on Twitter, please. Gosh.
Oh gosh. Well, the thing is that on top of that, it's just like this. Well, I guess it's because we're PC gamers and we get all of it. But it's also easier for us to go like, you can play Starfield and play Star Citizen and Squadron 42. Like there's nothing that prevents you from doing both. Just time, and you can make time if you feel like you're doing this, you can do that. And almost certainly by the time that Starfield is out and released, we'll see more people who are interested in space games. So Spaceborne will probably get a lot of attention. Elite and maybe a little bit of Eve. It's harder to do because Eve is a little bit more hardcore and that kind of stuff. The X games might get a little bit more boost in sales, and almost certainly Star Citizen will start to see sales go up. People say, "Hey, I didn't care about the space genre until I played Starfield, and I wanted to play more." And boom, because we've seen this before. It happened with No Man's Sky, with
Cyberpunk.
Yeah, and Cyberpunk. We start to see
Cyberpunk was a
more
train
people.
wreck, and it got so many more people excited in that genre.
Yeah, so
I look forward to it. It feels like the game that conceptually they wanted to do with Mass Effect Andromeda, which had a very cool trailers and then just dropped the ball. So I got my fingers crossed for it. What was the date again? September 9th, I think? Something like that?
I think so.
Yeah.
I was looking up right now. It is September 6th. September 6th.
Okay. Just flip that 9 over. Cool. Well, I'm looking forward to that. And I guess we'll probably meet up again in June and talk about whatever they talk about then. So if you're listening to this and you're interested in Starfield, make sure to check out that episode.
You may have I may bully Space Tomato to do a live stream with us together watching it and reacting to it live.
I would,
because I feel like we're the only two Star Citizen creators who are like Starfield.
I would gladly do that. I'm excited for that game.
Yeah.
All right, let's jump into the main topic of the day then. Star Citizen. We go from the space to the star to the star. I really wish it was Starborn. Then I could call this episode Starborn, Starfield, Star Citizen, or whatever. Anyways, we're going to talk about engineering and tractor beams mostly today, and building interiors. Now, which of these amazingly fun topics would you like to tackle first?
Let's start with building interiors because it's the oldest.
Okay.
And we have a little bit of an insight on some of the stuff from SCL that the teams has talked about.
So I haven't watched that yet. That came out yesterday?
Yes. The first 20 or so minutes is what really tackles this because some folks from Montreal were visiting the UK studio and were talking.
What kind of stuff were they going over that we didn't know before?
Well, one of the things is that they have completely reworked buildings. So all buildings across all landing zones are getting looked at and resized appropriately. So you might see some buildings that are slightly bigger than they were before because the interiors are too big. So they realized that like most of the buildings were never intended to have interiors, so they're just there as kind of window dressing. So
did they say that? Did they say they were never intended to have interiors?
Some of them, yeah, for sure. They didn't explicitly say it, but they definitely implied it because they're like, yeah, we went to like ArcCorp and looked at some of the buildings and we had to resize them because they weren't big enough for building for interiors. And if you look at some of the buildings, like they barely fit an Aurora on top of them sometimes.
Yeah,
it'd be a very small interior space.
Yeah. Especially Lorville. Those buildings are tiny.
Mm-hmm. So. That's part of the overhaul of the Lorville cityscape, let alone the interiors. Is that like they wanted to try to make all of these buildings interiors functionable. There's also a discussion on hey, can we ever go to the ground floor, to the bottom of ArcCorp and walk around? And this is the first time I think CIG's actually addressed this head on, because you always hear CIG goes, maybe. And we want to do that. Yeah, we want to do that.
Yeah,
but they basically said, "Listen, there is a lot of everything that you have said on Spectrum or Reddit or on YouTube. There are devs who have talked about it inside the game, And all of these devs, including one of them who's actually a brand new dev, like he got into game dev in 2020 during the pandemic. And
Wow.
his first job was with Turbulent. So this is his first job. And he was just like, yeah, well, we're gamers. We play other games and we see the comments. We also agree, like, yeah, Night City is cool. But they also kind of set some expectations, being like, what we have now, like with ArcCorp, is fine. We just need more building interiors.
And maybe a little more verticality, I think, would be nice.
Yeah, like building interiors and more stuff like that. But they've basically said that there is no plans for an extensive ground-based gameplay around ArcCorp, just because it would take a lot of resources, but not give a lot of actual gameplay value, and it would take away a lot of the focus away from other things, because they've said, like, yeah, we have 1,000 people working on it, but there's still only so much time you can give to certain aspects, and they want to focus on, ground gameplay for outposts and vehicles, or ship combat or space stations. That's more important to them than making sure that you have a ground, like have a gameplay with like ArcCorp or city interiors. So
it must be tough being on those things in the game, because it feels like almost everything that they do, like every major initiative they do, there are two sides of people who are like, hey, build this out further, do this in more detail, make this feel better, look better. And then there are people who are like, okay, you're done with this, move on, get to the next system, get to the next station, do the next thing. And like, no matter what they do, you always have to go back to your decision and be like, was this the right one to do? Should we have built this out more? I do like what they're doing with Stanton, though, how they're building it out. And I think that's kind of, they're taking advantage of the delay that they've seen from server meshing. Like, they're letting that, going back to when they were talking about Pyro in CitizenCon, I was kind of annoyed, like other people, because it kind of came off like the idea that, how were you guys going to release this a year, 2 years ago, when you're just now getting this stage now? And it feels almost like they did like not a soft restart, but like took a step back and said, how much deeper can we go with this if server meshing is going to take us another year and a half? And started doing all these things, kind of like building interiors and getting that going. What do you think of that?
I agree. And in fact, that was another thing they mentioned at SEL, because somebody else said, why is the building interiors a priority when we have Pyro? Someone asked that question, like, we got Pyro coming up, why is this a priority? And effectively what Jared said was, staggered development, the way it works is everyone is working on something different, and they're staggered in terms of, this team's working on this team's working on that. And so while there are teams working on Pyro, and even a couple of the Montreal devs were like, yeah, we've actually worked on some with some of those teams to work on outposts and or they called derelict settlements. So there's like, yeah, we've actually been doing stuff on Pyro, but that's not we're not only working on Pyro, we're working on this factor, and we jump between teams as need be. And they said that, like, in the last year, because they've been developing tools that help them out for Pyro, it's also been helping them out for Stanton and will help them out in the future. Like the Rastar tool. They were just glowing about the Rastar tool. They're like, what used to take us 3 months is taking us a week. So for reference, the derelict reclaimer, the Ghost Hollow missions and the Ghost Hollow location, and then the new location that's in Daymar, they have 15 new locations like Daymar that will be available in possibly 319, if not 320.
Wait,
15.
What? Like the new Whistler's
like
Crypt or whatever it's called?
Yes. Like that. They're working on 15 of them right now.
Huh.
And that was their example of like how quickly they can iterate once they have the tools. Now that they have Rastar, it just speeds up the process, because before they had to hand place everything. With Rastar, it makes it easier to just drag and drop and other, kind of fix it up once they have tools. Plus, they also have this huge library that they've been creating over the last year and a half. So now it becomes easier for them to populate the worlds. That's why they can do derelict. Remember, the derelict settlements on Stanton was just Microtech, and it was like 7. In 317.2. And in 318, there's 35 over the entirety of Stanton. And they want to increase that number in future. So, like, it really is just they've got the tools and they have the training to work on those tools and they have the assets they can use. And their point was being like, this is why we do this, is because when Pyro comes out, we can populate Pyro much faster than Stanton, and then we'll be able to populate Nyx faster than Pyro, and so on and so forth. This is all just building up that stage, so we can actually sit there and go do a entire planetary system in like a year or less than that. They didn't actually say the dates for like planetary systems or for like star systems, but they're implying that their ability to build these things it's becoming faster and faster because of these tools, which are directly related to what they've been working on that has nothing to do with Pyro. It's just in general.
It's the tools. It's like a catchphrase of Star Citizen over the years. The tools. But
the tools.
To an extent, it has proven itself. I mean, I've been doing a video for the new star map. I think that'll actually be out by the time this podcast is out. And one of the things that I got to focus on in that video was how much the developers wanted building blocks to be done, because they had all these ideas and things they wanted to do, but everything took so long in Flash and scale form that like they just could not get that stuff in. And then they got building blocks done, and now we start to see actual reasonable UI coming in with each feature instead of like, something that's I'm not gonna lie, the quality of UI has still taken a while to go up, even with building blocks, but they are unique. Like they feel like they have much more purpose than they used to. They have animations, they have they're reactive, they just feel better. And I think that sounds like the same kind of thing that they're talking about with Rastar.
Yeah. I mean, the example for that we're just talking about is like, just look at the kiosks. The kiosks, like the
sales kiosks
panels that we have, the sales kiosks.
Yeah.
Look how they've iterated in just like a year. We've gone from the basic version that we've had for ever to just about every kiosk now can have its own customizable like UI. And like the difference between between the commodities kiosk and the sales kiosk for like ships and they each have their own unique styles. And once CIG actually converts and actually gets everything into like a base standard that they want to for things like the UI and the MFDs, I think we'll see the same. I think we probably will see several versions of the HUD for ships be dropping every couple of patches. It may take like a while for them to get that new HUD working, the new HUD working. But once that's done, then probably within the next like 3 months, we'll see another one, and then maybe in 6 months or 6 months from there, or another 3 months from there, we may have 2 or 3, because they can iterate pretty fast once they have the base version running and working, and they like it.
Yeah.
The problem is getting to that point. So
right, and we know that they wanted to do that with HUDs, but they just never seem to have gotten around to it. I think they're still doing some customization on that front. So going back to the building interiors, what kind of stuff, this was like the newer stuff we found out, but what kind of stuff are you envisioning from what they told us about building interiors the average player would be benefiting from them?
Well, there's a couple different things. Number one, and they brought this up in ISE because one of the guys there is actually working on building interiors, is that they soft confirmed that buildings will have individual purposes. As we've talked about before, like, oh yeah, well, top floor has this, and middle floor has this, and not that was just more of a explanation, not necessarily a like how they were going to do things. But he was talking about how like they're working on apartments, and they're working on several different versions of apartments that they can do overlays for. Then they're currently in the white box phase. And I think really what this will do is this will make city gameplay feel unique, because with the combination of the modular mission tools and modular building interiors, you mix and match that in any way you want to, and now you've got an infinite number of possibilities, from delivery missions to assassination missions to bounty missions to like confiscation missions to smuggling missions, you name it. You can do a lot of stuff with that. You could have entire organizations who just exist in one building that you constantly go to for reputation bonuses. So you have like, so it's this, that alone is huge. But then you have things like your apartments where you'll be able to store your stuff. And I know a lot of people are concerned, like, hey, but what's the purpose of apartments? What will this do for my gameplay? And the answer is nothing, more likely, other than store your stuff. But this is an MMO, so as everyone likes to say, the real end game of an MMO is fashion, it's style, it's customization. And you'll be surprised how many people will buy an apartment and then just sit there and just try to make it the perfect apartment, to have trophies everywhere, and have that immersion experience. And I think a lot of people are looking forward to that kind of stuff. So,
I mean, look at how big that's a thing in GTA 5, where you're all in the same city. Imagine you have different star systems, space stations, and ships where you can do the same thing. It's a ton of opportunities there.
There's a lot of people who are looking to do that kind of. I started in the slums, and then I worked my way up to a penthouse suite, and like Microtech or Terra or whatever, where I can just overlook this thing in this big, expansive mansion, practically. Does it necessarily mean that like the gameplay will be better? No, but it gives an additional like reward and an additional sort of flavor to the game. While also allowing for missions to take place in those apartments, or for you to I could see them do a thing where you have to go meet up with a mission giver, and they come out of their apartment. You go meet them up, and they're like, "Hey, come over here, let's do this thing." Like the kind of GTA sort of experience, talking with mission givers, sort of things. I definitely see those flavors showing up. It gives them the option to do that, at least.
And so that would be kind of replacing some of the hab buildings that we have in the cities now, and updating them to this new model that probably will have more areas, more space for you to walk around. We've seen kind of like that mega building complex looking style where it's like a bunch of floors around a giant opening in the middle, and it gave you it looked very dystopian, felt very ArcCorp, like it belonged there. I'm excited to see how the apartment buildings go, but also they talk a little bit about going underground with the building interiors, which I thought was a very interesting way that they could connect it to underground. I mean, they could like use assets from underground bunkers to build out the further underground of building interiors.
They could do a lot of stuff with that. Like, they talk about these as being dungeon kits, and I mean, you could literally have them be dungeons. You could have entire gangs that roam the underground areas, the sewers, or the subways of ArcCorp. That would be an entire mission set up right there. You can say, hey, take this elevator down, and now suddenly you're in an expansive dungeon where you can go find a gang leader and take them out, or rescue a hostage who's been captured down there,
or sneak into a city.
Sneak into a city, or smuggle stuff through the tunnels to take to locations.
That's the smuggling gameplay right there, because they've talked about that a ton. They're going to have customs at cities. You can't sneak in weapons, you can't get contraband in there, but if you got a gang that's your mission giver in Lorville, like you said, it might be the way to get to them. It's cool possibilities, and I guess it comes down to the missions team and the sandbox teams to see what they do with it. Does it feel like they're focusing heavier on city gameplay and this idea surrounding buildings than you thought they would before?
Oh yeah, 100%. I thought they would get those buildings to a decent standard, and I didn't even think about building interiors being a thing as the way that they're trying to do it now. But now it just feels like I get it now. Like, when I first saw it, I talked with Execute about it, and I had the same reaction, which was, this is brilliant because it gives so much. It makes it easier for them to make cities matter, because I'm going to be honest, and I think a lot of people agree with this. There's no reason to go to a city. Unless you're forced to, and it sucks. Like, nobody wants to go to Lorville, or to Orison, or New Babbage, or Area 18, unless you absolutely have to, or you're just looking for immersion. But most people will spawn in that landing zone. They'll get what they need from it. They'll get in their ship, and they'll never come back, because they don't want to play City Simulation. They don't want to play City Citizen. They want to play Star Citizen. And so giving a reason for you to come back to those cities to make money, get reputation, have more experiences, will get people. I mean, look at Orison. When they did these, now they've kind of turned those platforms of Siege of Orison into their own missions. We're seeing more people trying to do those missions because they have more value. Because people will go back, hey, I can make money, I can get gear, and yeah, it's just a good idea overall. So
Yeah, I wonder if we will see smaller landing zones around planets that maybe weren't planning on having some from the lore.
Please. Towns are my ultimate high. I'd love to see tiny little townlets and hamlets dotted around.
Well, that's how these new outposts are kind of feeling, right? They combine
Yeah.
enough of them, and they're basically little towns.
Yeah, but you put yourself like a nice little like small building, like a 3 or 4 story building in the middle of that,
Yeah.
as a or like a little development of some kind. So you see like smaller buildings with like habs or outposts surrounding it. Those kind of things will give you more of a flavor of like, hey, this is a developing world. This is a world that people are trying to make it in.
Yeah.
And that also gives it a little bit more flair for the future. So we might see that in places like Castra or other places.
Very cool details. The building interiors are exciting. That is a bit of a surprise, I would say, for me, and I think a lot of other people seeing how they're developing that. I hope it turns out well. I hope they're able to use it well. Let's talk about engineering. This is a very big part of the game, and one that's been planned for a while. That's the first thing I want to say, because it feels like every time something like this gets reopened in terms of topics in Star Citizen, there's another wave of So when is the first time you heard about the idea behind ship engineering in the game?
2014, when I first started the game.
Been a cool minute.
Engineering has been part of the gameplay loop concepts since the launch. The idea of being able to have multi-crew ships where you can be a gunner or an engineer or whatever. So it's been around a while.
And I guess the next most important question: does everybody have to be an engineer? Is this forced gameplay? Is this turning into what is that game? Star Trek? No, not Bridge Crew. It would be that other one. What was that other game that everybody talks about? It's got a weird name. I think it's 2D, very deep ship engineering simulator kind of game. I don't remember what it's called.
I don't remember that one.
But are they making a full game out of this?
Not really. I mean, the thing is I think what CIG wants to do is they want to make it deep enough where it could be its own game. And we'll talk about this later when we talk about the new tractor beams and how how this applies to not just engineering but salvage and other things.
Mm-hmm.
But like you talked about shipbreaker earlier, like CIG wants to do a hard space shipbreaker light. Like you're not going to be able to like pull up every seat out of a ship, but pretty much everything you see, the basic concept of like pulling off the hull plating and then removing the superstructure and taking in all the components. That's what salvage is going to be. And I think that's the same thing with engineering, whereas like it can be its own game. Someone could just do an engineering gameplay loop and they'd have fun and enjoy the experience. But not everyone's going to have to be an engineer. I do think that likely you're going to have to learn a little bit about it. If you're just like, I'm just a fighter pilot, it's like, well, you're going to have to learn how to damage control on the fly, but you're not going to have to like not everyone's going to have to be like, oh, now I have to do my engineering thing. But you almost certainly, especially if you own a larger ship like a Carrack or a Connie, you almost certainly will have to have an engineer on board whose job is to make things go. I use the example of Sea of Thieves. Like everyone wants to be the pilot or the captain or shooting the cannons, but you also need someone who's patching the holes and bailing the water out. Otherwise, you're going to die. So that's technically what it is. You're the patch holes, bail water. So.
Right. That it's. I feel like that's an example that's been used a lot. Sea of Thieves was, when it first came out, I remember people being like, this feels kind of like what I want from Star Citizen, like light. I want this, but in spaceship form. And that was always the way I went about it, thinking about it, is that like you can screw around, just scoot around on your ship with your mates, but if you guys get attacked or something goes wrong, then somebody better know how to keep you safe. And it also, it helps add to missions and stuff. I mean, the thing that has gotten me most excited about engineering is that engineering and also the tractor beam stuff that they've talked about, like we said, is that it's not even just, it's not like they're bringing in another Siege of Orison or another mission giver even. This is like a system that literally touches on every other piece of gameplay, so it expands the game as a whole. But do you think that they could go too far with it?
I think they could, but I don't think they will. I think CIG is. I don't think anyone can accuse CIG of overcomplicating gameplay right now, because like everything is pretty basic, and CIG likes to do the very basic and then work their way up. I think a lot of people are worried that they may overcomplicate it, but I think CIG will try to get it to the point where it's fun for most people, and then they'll try to add depth to it, similar to like mining. Mining isn't everyone's cup of tea. Trust me, I've heard plenty of PvPers who talk about how they hate mining and they'll never do it in Korea because they hate it and so on and so forth. But you can do it, and it's not mind-numbingly boring. It's somewhat engaging, and you can do the process. May not be everyone's cup of tea, but it's possible. I think that's what we'll have that with salvage and with like engineering, but with mining right now, you can also buy little upgrades and really specialize all of your materials and everything else like that. I think that's what they're going to go for. Like, everyone can be a competent engineer. You may have to learn a little bit about engineering, but there will be enough space for CIG for you to really specialize in engineering, to be the Kayleys, the Scotties, the Amoses of the universe, who can just like look at a ship and go, I know how to fix this.
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna be so worried if we have an Amos in the universe.
There's several of them. There's several of them people in my chat have already been like, I want to be Amos. I'm like, I want to be away from you.
You can fix another ship then, buddy. So another thing that I think is important to talk about with engineering is something that we already see in the game, but is easy to miss. And that is something they went over when they did SCL in engineering, is that fact that it's not an actual job in the game. It's like you just kind of do it if it's there. It's like if you're a medic in this game, you don't hit some button that says medic for the session and get limited to a certain class and a certain style of playing, and you're forced to be a medic at all times, and you can't shoot people, you can't leave. You're just doing what you choose to do. And it feels like engineering is the same idea. If there's a component that broke on a ship that you're on and you're the janitor and you know how to fix it, then fix it. It's not going to change you to an engineer. And that seems like it is a good way to dispel people's fears about being forced into engineering gameplay.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's no reason you necessarily have to do it. I just think that I do believe that it'll probably have you'll as part of the understanding your ship component of any kind of things. Like if you really like, I want to be a fighter pilot. Like if you like modern fighter pilots and modern pilots have to know how their aircraft works in a basic concept at least, or understand what the systems do in order to do stuff, functionally, to allow them to understand what they can do with troubleshooting, stuff like that. I think you'll probably have something to that degree. Like not everyone's going to be an engineer, but everyone has to understand how it works.
Yeah.
So
there's a lot of, it's not a game that's going to, well, actually, I don't know this. I feels like it's not a game that is going to spec you out of gameplay because you don't know about it, but it is going to require you to have, like you said, some basic knowledge. Like you can't just jump into any ship like you can right now, go out there and start beating people in dogfights. You actually have to know how the ship works. The game we're playing right now is just so simple compared to what the game is aiming to be. Do you think, we already kind of see the pushback, do you think that's going to hurt it in the long run with all these players who are getting into it, getting used to what we do right now, and being very hesitant to embrace kind of the vision that they've had that they're starting to get to?
I think as one of my long-term fears is that a lot of people will get used to the idea of Star Citizen or what Star Citizen is right now. And when Star Citizen evolves, because it has to, people go, no, wait, go back. And you can see that a little bit right now. When you talk about combat, everyone says, oh, combat now sucks. But oh, what's, you ask them what's the best combat? And they'll go 263 or 0.8 or 1.0. Or were the best experiences for combat. And they're probably, I don't think those people are the majority. I think the minority. But I am afraid that we may see that in the future. Now, my hope is that as Star Citizen advances and becomes more complex, they'll also add more systems in to make it less frustrating. Because I think the biggest problem that people have with new systems being added are bugs. Bugs cause problems, and those problems slow down their gameplay, and they don't like that. I don't like the idea of having to prepare for an hour only for have to have a bug destroy my ship, and now I have to redo everything again.
Yeah.
No one likes that. But eventually, hopefully, knock on wood, we will reach a point where Star Citizen is a finished game, or at least the gameplay portion is finished, and they've worked out the bugs. So when you're playing the game, bugs won't be an issue. It'll be the game itself. And we're moving in that direction. While I know 318 had a horrible launch, and there's still lots of problems with the game.
Yeah.
It's a better game in 318 than it was in 317. I have not seen a single person be like, this is worse now. It's just most people are just frustrated by not even being able to play the game or, not be able to get their ships. But it's improving. It's steadily improving. And there are some things that are still there and will pop up again in the future. But it is getting it to be a better, more stable experience as Star Citizen develops. And I think that's really going to be the counterpoint. I think that's really the frustration, and my fears are mostly based around people like who are concerned about gameplay moving forward becoming more complex without bugs being fixed. So
that's fair. Yeah, I think a lot of the frustration with this game when it comes to when it comes to gameplay in general is around the bugs. Like, I don't mind having to fly across the system to go see my friend, but geez, if it means I have to deal with the star map, I'll just log off.
Yeah. I had the experience this last week where it's like, I'd really like to do a Zero to Hero run, and I started it, but it's like I couldn't even log into the game. Okay, why? What? I have to, like, how am I going to get the motivation to even try to log into the game to play the game when the game itself, I roll the dice every time I try to like boot it up to see if it even lets me in, let alone crashes me to desktop.
Yeah, so I definitely waited like a week and a half before starting my new character in 318, which is I'm doing a run of not being able to fly a ship on that account for a month, and it's been interesting so far. I'm only a day in, and I spent the majority of my 2-hour session just trying to get somebody to give me a ride. Like I had to pull teeth to get from Microtech to Port Tressler. And it took me another hour to get an hour and 80,000 credits to get somebody to take me to the next space station. And I was offering 80,000 credits, and people were like, okay, but why didn't that person take you? I'm like, because they're already gone. Okay, but why didn't they come back to get you? Because they told me to ask for somebody else to take me so I could meet them. It's it was so difficult to try and get a ride. And obviously there's the fear of the troll.
Here's a secret. What you're doing is a gameplay style that I want to do in the future because it's actually lore accurate. There is a lore religion called the Church of the Traveler. And the Church of the Traveler is all about traveling without a ship. You're not allowed to purchase anything. You're not allowed to pay for anything. You just take the kindness of strangers and just constantly move. And so you're doing something, you're paying people, obviously, because we're not there yet.
Yeah.
But that's definitely something that is not only is it cool, but it's also in lore. So
it is the idea is awesome. The game is just not ready though. I think already what I'm seeing is that people just don't expect people to not be flying. Like, the game needs more stuff in it that convinces people that it makes sense to not be flying all the time. Because every single time I asked for a ride, people were like, can you just fly here? I'm like, I can't. They're like, you don't have a ship? Like, no, I'm just trying not to use a ship. That's crazy. Like,
Yeah.
So,
Well,
yeah, I think it's going to take some time.
I think when we start seeing engineering and multi-crew start becoming a thing, people will want people to be on their ship. So it'll be easy for someone to be like, "Hey, I need someone to be an engineer," and you'd be like, "Hey, I can do that."
Yeah.
You know, I can volunteer to do that stuff.
That's fair. That's fair. Engineering's looking good. Let's talk about the last little bit of the day, and honestly, in my opinion, probably the most interesting. I wasn't even planning on having this on the podcast until that episode came out. Tractor beams are looking dank. Unexpectedly, too. I was not expecting to see a tractor beam change before the cargo refactor. What's your take so far?
This is the biggest change to Star Citizen since the PES. And I 100% like stand by that statement and will forever, because this is not just a gameplay addition. It seems like really simple.
Wait. Hold on. You said since PES?
Since PES.
Yes. That was like last week.
I know, but like what I mean is like this is as big of an addition as PES. And I'm sure a lot of people will disagree with me on this one, but this is hear me out on this explanation.
Give it a go.
This sort of tractor beam stuff is the first cross gameplay addition, because this is not just tractor beams. It's tractor beams for restock, rearm, and salvage. So now you're pulling stuff out. It's engineering gameplay. It's a bunch of different things that are added into one, because it's the tool that makes a lot of those things work.
Yeah.
When I was watching the ISC about it, I paused it halfway and was just like, this is you can now restock your ballista. Jumptown is going to look absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
Because not only if we have an organization, you put in some ballistas hidden in the mountains or in little locations to protect yourself. Well, now when that ballista is out, you can call for a logistics support. So this adds logistics to the game, where someone can be just for a little bit further away at a forward base with missiles that then they can fly over to the ballista, unload those missiles, reload them onto the ballista, fly back and go get more stuff. It makes that gameplay valuable and possible. It's a huge addition for that. Not to mention the fact that pirates now can fully strip out like components and sell them, which is another huge addition, or salvagers in general. It makes the desire of like, okay, the first thing you do when you find a derelict ship as a salvage, suit up, fly out, get your little tractor beam, pull out all the components you can find, put them in your ship, go back and start the process.
Literally what they put in the trailer.
Yeah. And it's adding to that. You want to EVA to that ship. That will unlock things like my favorite gameplay that I don't want them to add, but they'll add, and I secretly want them to add, which is the Event Horizon / Aliens experience.
Oh gosh.
Where you show up on a ship that's derelict and you're like, oh, I'm here to salvage it, but it's like something is on the ship.
Or suddenly you're not on a salvage mission.
You're not on a salvage mission. You're on a survival mission, kind of situation. And that sort of experience, I know a lot of people are looking for, because that's the sort of it's the thing they want to do. They want to play the Aliens experience. So.
And that's also such a good example of what makes Star Citizen very interesting in the way they're doing it. You don't get super in-depth. I mean, this is pretty in-depth salvage, but you're not getting hard space shipbreaker. What you are getting is the ability to go outside of hard space shipbreaker and continue an episode of I don't know, Alien Isolation or Halo or Dead Space. Like you can jump between types of games as you play, and it's just really cool to see that sort of fluidity shown in what you're saying is like the tractor beams and how they pick and choose, or they apply to so many different types of gameplay.
Yeah, it makes a lot of validity for people to play a different style or to pivot. Being able to salvage missiles off of a ship, you could do it just to make money, to save money. We may even be able to do things in the future like crafting. So say you found a derelict ship and it has a missile on it. you could go, hey, I could remove this warhead and stick it to this other missile that I want to have. So now I have, a new type of missile that can work, but I can only do it because I have these two versions of those things. There's a lot of possibilities now that this unlocks. Like PES allows for the bigger universe and so on and forth. This allows for gameplay to actually start to evolve beyond its own little siloed gameplay experiences. Now everything can become more fluid. We have a little bit of that right now, but this is really the big kind of glue that'll stick a lot of these things together, because moving stuff and holding stuff is a pretty big part of that experience. So
It's also, I think, something we started back when the Terrapin came out was acknowledging components inside of ships. And ever since then, they've talked about how they can't get them to actually be moved because they're connected to the outside of the ship, or they're not physicalized because they don't have the spaces in the ships. And like, we've been waiting so long for them to finally be actual objects that are in the ships. And I don't know if they were physicalized before, but this is the first sign to me that you can actually like take out and put them back in. It's just a massive milestone. What I'm wondering is how far back in terms of the ship development does that stick? Because we know there are some ships that don't have actual components in them, but we also know that like ever since the MSR, I think they've been making a very keen point we have components in the ship. So I'm wondering, are these gold standard ships? Are they just more new ships? Are they ships going back to a certain point where you'll be able to pull components out? What do you think?
I think it's everyone that is available to access components, because there was actually something mentioned in the monthly report, which I'm sure you saw as well, which was that they want to redo the interior of the Freelancer so that actually has components.
Yeah.
I think pretty much all the ships have component slots now, if not component locations. Some component locations, component slots are empty on, like, say, the 890. And the reason why that is because it's for stuff that is going to exist in the future that they don't have yet. So like jump drives or the blades, servers and server blades and stuff like that. So, but I think almost every ship outside of the starter few, like I don't think we'll see it. We may actually see it because of the 300s update. I don't know if they added components that they may have, component bays, but like the Aurora, the Hornet, the Mustang, the Avenger, the Connie, the Freelancer. I think those are the ones that you don't, and maybe even the Cutlass. Those are ones that you won't have, but every other ship will have components of some kind, and every other ground vehicle. There may be a handful of other ones. I'm sure someone will correct me in the comments, and please do correct me in the comments because we'd love to hear your own thoughts on these as well.
Comment and
like and subscribe.
Yeah.
But I don't think we're going to see that many ships missing it. And they've already said that the only ships you'll be able to get access to are size 0 to size 2.
Right.
Components. So like you won't be able to pull the jump drive out of or the quantum drive out of Carrack because that thing's huge. You're just not going to be able to pull that out.
Right. Yeah. So let's talk about that. I think the next conversation point, apologies, I think the next conversation point is surrounding the tractor beam itself. So obviously, God, I just love like that we can open a door and the components actually there is awesome.
Yeah.
How about though the idea that you can lift stuff that's so heavy with the tractor beam? There's a lot of complaints surrounding that. What do you think?
Whenever I see people complain about Beam Citizen, I usually come to the same discussion as like, okay, and then how would you like to do it? What way would you like to do it? And if they're like, oh, well, we need to have some sort of crane system or other things, like you want them to build a bespoke system specifically for pulling components out of a ship that may take them a year to develop for just immersion sakes. It's just beams make sense. And tractor beams is just a very aesthetic and also appropriate addition to the game. I think a lot of people are freaking out because they didn't realize that tractor beams, like hand carryable tractor beams, have been around or been planned in Star Citizen forever. But I also think that a lot of people are are over or worried, much ado about nothing. They're worried about this, like, well, why I can pull out my hand tractor beam and it can hold the ship. It's like, no, you won't be able to pull out your multi-tool and hold the ship. Eventually, when they have the tractor beam tools, we may have a variety of different tools that they've mentioned. We know that there's going to be one that's more like a gun, more like a big kind of tool. We know that ship tractor beams will work, the SRV and such. They've even mentioned Titan suits having an industrial mode and a loader mode. So we may actually have Titan suits who have like size 0 tractor beams on them that they can pull stuff out with the tractor beams and then carry boxes and stuff like that with their arms. So it's a elegant way of dealing with the problem of how do you move things in a game that has so many moving parts in a way that feels realistic to the universe. And I think that's the key that a lot of people forget, is that it feels realistic to the universe, because this is a game with anti-grav technology and gravity generators. So yeah, I'm sure they have a way of negating some mass. But even CIG has said, no, you won't be able to do crazy stuff with your hand tool. It'll just be, they'll have some limitations. And I think when CIG gets to actually dialing in the experience for this sort of thing, they'll have the more weighty feel to it. Like when picking up on one SCU box with your tool, your multi-tool, it'll probably be like you're struggling to pick it up. Like it'll feel heavy and harder to move around. Right now, you're just whipping things around like, nope, not one's business, because it's just the first implementation.
Yeah.
But once they get to that dial-in factor, we'll start to see it more. So
that scalability you mentioned is a good point, because it's just you gotta realize that we're doing professions with multiple levels of gameplay. Like salvage has hull scraping, yes, but it also has now component salvaging. Ship munching is going to be a thing, and fuel siphoning is going to be a thing. And that's just salvage. And then you have to look at mining, exploration, farming, pilots, repair people, engineers. Like all of these different things need tons of in-depth gameplay. So at some point you have to say, hey, what's step one for all this stuff? What is the type of gameplay that a player can jump into the MMO and not have to learn for a week, or not have to work for a week to get the chance to do that? Boom, just attach it to a multi-tool. Everybody has access to it. Everybody can get an attachment, and everybody can try a very basic version of it. I think that's a very good approach for something where you're going to have to keep developing gameplay on gameplay, but you're also going to need to make it cater to newcomers and beginners.
Yeah, it's an elegant solution, because for a game, you want to have something that's easy to understand and easy to pick up. And the idea of having a tool that you could just swap out components and fix it is perfect. And to be realistic, I know plenty of mechanics who, if they had something like a multi-tool, they would be over the moon because of how much equipment and stuff they have to carry now. And we're moving in that direction right now. We're trying to get more, like as a society and as a civilization, just like humans are trying to get our massive numbers of tools and make them as simple as possible, so we can create. It's easier for us to make stuff faster, and we don't have to, where's my 10 millimeter socket wrench? It's always missing and I need it for this. Now you got this for this tool. So logically it makes sense, and gameplay wise, it's an elegant solution to the problem of how do we make something that we don't even know in the future what we might need to do. We might need to have a completely different way that, to interact with the game. Oh, we got the multi-tool. Just make an attachment for the multi-tool and it'll work like that. And beams work that same way, where it's like a beam is just an easy solution to a problem, rather than having to build out bespoke animation and a bunch of other stuff, which can take time and energy and, which very little feedback other than I'm immersed,
Well, but we know that even with this focus on tractor beams, they are still like working on physical interactions. Being able to use your hands to interact with objects is on the progress tracker.
Yeah. Ropes.
Right.
They're working on ropes. I wouldn't put it past CIG being able to attach ropes to, a cutlass and then attach it to those like little hook-on points of an Ursa, and be able to airlift an Ursa with ropes or with steel cables or something like that. I'm sure they'll try to do that stuff. It's going to expand beyond it, but for now, the easiest integration is just beams.
It's hard to see these things applied and then think about how they're used in the future. But I think a lot of the complaints that people have about these things are complaints that, like you said earlier in the show, that employees also come up with as they look at them. There are some things that get past them into the live game that I'm like, guys, did nobody said anything about this? But
Yeah.
I think with something as big as tractor beams and just like a major game feature like that is something that they're going to run through the paces to make sure it actually works how they want it. How do you think
Yeah.
how do you think they should separate multi-tool tractor beams from the actual tool tractor beams from vehicle tractor beams, and who do you think each of those three things is made for?
Multitude tractor beams, they've even said, is designed for mobility, designed for zero G mobility. That was its real original design. Was the idea that you have this ability, this tool, which can be used for other things, but in zero G, you won't always have infinite amounts of EVA fuel, and you may not even have EVA fuel at all, depending on the armor you're wearing. That's one of those things where, like right now, what you see in game is not going to be the future. You're going to have to use your multi-tool to get around some places. And I think it was heavily like designed for Squad 42. Like that concept was designed for Squad 42 because I'm sure there are levels where you don't have an EVA suit, you're zero G, that you're going to have to move around with a multi-tool of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
And having a multi-tool makes sense because you have to use it for multiple. It's a Swiss Army knife. It's just a fancy Swiss Army knife. And every pilot has a Swiss Army knife. So
it needs to feel kind of weak in all the things it does.
It needs to feel weak. And I could see it lifting one SCU things, but I also see them dialing it down so like it is barely lifting that thing off the ground because it's not designed to do that. It's designed to hold small objects and such. And then I think as they progress up in size, they'll become bigger and bigger. Like I don't think they showed off the multi-crew or the gun type thing, like flinging an Aurora around. I don't think that's actually going to happen in game.
No.
It just doesn't make a lot of sense.
For starters, in that scene, it felt to me like what it was doing was holding the Aurora back as the Aurora was trying to fly away. Because what he was saying was, you'll be able to hold a ship. He never said anything about lifting a ship or directing a ship or moving a ship. Just hold it.
Well, what my idea immediately when he's talked about that before they showed the visuals was, there's a scene in Star Wars Rebels where a ship is impounded and they have this like sort of like a wheel lock sort of thing that but it's like hover and it locks onto the to the ship to prevent it from takeoff, and they do this whole big thing to try to like remove the wheel lock from it so that the person can escape, because I think it's actually Princess Leia is the one who they're trying to let out when she was a younger version of Princess Leia. So it's fantastic. It's a great episode, but that was what my immediate thought was. It was like, impounding a ship or keeping a ship stable while you're out and about in a place that has maybe low G or no G, maybe like a deployable. You can just sit there and you plop it down, you kind of crank it up and then turn it on, and it holds your ship in place. Or if you're doing field repairs and you need to get underneath the ship to fix a problem, you have a little thing you can like lift it up a little bit and you can get underneath it and fix the problem and then reduce it down. It's an, again, elegant solution to not having to have like a jack of some kind to hold up your ships, or a bespoke, pit system where you can walk underneath the ship and work on it. It's just use a tractor beam, lift it up.
So who is that actual full-size tractor beam for, the personal one?
Moving larger cargo. So like 1 SCU, 2 SCU, 3 SCU cargo crates, the bigger crew. Ones. The deck crew, yeah. Picking up heavy objects like missiles and stuff like that to like install it onto or weapons to install onto like fighters and such.
Do you think they should have a ground mount for that? For when it's used in where do you sit on this whole idea of a tractor beam shouldn't be able to lift more than you can lift as a person?
It's just ridiculous. It's a tractor beam. Like, it's supposed to negate mass. Like, I think there's going to be some limits to it, and even CIG says there's going to be limits to it. But it's going to be more than you think because it is space science fiction technology,
right?
And it just fits the purpose. I think we'll also see larger scale. Like, I don't think 32 SCU crate is going to be lifted by that. I think you're going to need a tractor beam with a ship to move those huge crates where they need to be, kind of like a crane. And I think they'll build the Rock DS, but with a tractor beam attachment instead. Like those sorts of things will exist in the universe because they just need to do it. They just need the technology in there before they can actually release those ships. I wouldn't be surprised if one of the unannounced vehicles that they have on the roadmap is a ground vehicle that moves cargo crates.
Because needs to be. I think that is we need that. I also think people don't realize that we're moving like a 1/8 SCU box of titanium, and
Yeah.
like that one. Let's see, one SCU is 1 meter by 1 meter by 1 meter, right?
I
So
think so. Yeah, 1 cubic meter.
I couldn't tell you how much that would weigh, but I imagine it's probably enough that a normal human isn't going to be running around the town delivering it to a locker. Like, I don't. If we wanted to limit ourselves to how much a human could carry in this game, we would be so screwed when it comes to the delivery missions and all of that. Especially like picking up an SCU box when the ships drop it when they're soft death, picking up a weapon like a size 4 weapon from a ship. You can't carry that as a person. So what else are we supposed to do?
There's going to have some solution, and it can't be something that's physicalized in the same way that we people would like want for like bespoke tools, because CIG tried that and it took them too long. They're going to have some sort of general catch-all technology to make it work, and it makes sense. I just think that there's a lot of people who don't see the forest for the trees. They see
Right.
this and they don't see the whole, like, this is an entire gameplay loop. Like, this is a whole thing that's going to be an entire section of the game that will allow for all of these other factors to run. It's the linchpin that will hold so many other things rather than just ships. So
Uh, the seeing tractor beams pulling components out of their slots and ships is probably the most exciting thing I've seen work in the game in years. Like I was so surprised to see that. I was expecting weapons and item detachment because we saw that in the monthly reports. They never said anything about moving components. That's like that's the best money making option when it comes to salvage. They just made salvage so much more realistic as a profession with that than just hull scraping.
and I wouldn't be surprised if Hull Munching was shortly behind it in terms of content, just because they seem to be very focused on that too.
Yeah, I was thinking hole munching this summer if there's a summer patch, or
Yeah.
maybe October.
Well, I think that's the other thing to point out, is that just how many things have been bottlenecked by PES. We see, like, we're going to see engineering probably by 4.0, if not shortly before then. CIG seems to be very, like, insistent that it's going to come out sooner than we think.
Yeah,
Tractor beams, cargo decks or cargo elevators. What else was there that we saw? Hull munching, bounty hunter gameplay. Like, it seems like what PES was this Valve release that allowed for a lot of gameplay tech, which had been in the background waiting to be done, to actually start its progress into getting into the game. And it shows how CIG can iterate pretty quickly once it has the tools in the background tech done. It can just go.
yeah.
We'll be surprised. I think we'll be surprised just how much stuff comes out this year that's just gameplay related.
I hope so. It's certainly looking good. I'm happy to see the mission stuff picking up too, and overall, it just seems like they've got a decent flow. The studios are working together fairly well in terms of locations, features, and missions. Like there's a definitive difference between the Star Citizen now and the Star Citizen 2 years ago, and it's feeling better with every quarter. Now, last year was rough because of the delays of 318, but now that we're kind of getting back to a schedule, they're starting to reveal some of the stuff that's being worked on that, like you said, might have been held back a little bit. But overall, I'm getting positive vibes right now from the development.
Yeah. It's a great time to be playing Star Citizen. Despite the problems with 318, which will improve, it's a great time to be playing Star Citizen. Yeah. Well, I mean, we know 318.1 is in PTU right now as of this recording. It'll probably be released in the next 2 weeks or so. And when it comes out, it'll probably have lots of fixes to calm all these issues. So 319 is on the horizon. It's bringing a lot of cool stuff. We'll have an entire summer. Like, usually summer is really a dead time for Star Citizen. It doesn't feel like that now. It feels like Star Citizen is just going to do something to accelerate a lot of stuff. So whatever patch comes after 319, if it's the hopeful 320 patch that's maybe in August, who knows? Because CIG seems to want to get back into this quarterly release. It would be a fantastic addition, I think. So
yeah, it's just a bummer that morale is kind of down because of 318. Because normally, I feel these kinds of updates, tractor beams with components, would be huge in the community. At least with the older players, it's a very big deal. So I'm sure we'll see more general excitement over the summer than we do now.
Yeah, I think, things will pick up.
Yeah. That about wraps us up, though. Thank you again for joining me, man. It's always a good episode to bring you on and talk about some of this nerdy stuff. But you also talk about nerdy stuff quite a bit.
I do.
Tell all the folks where they can find your nerdy stuff as well.
You can find my nerdy stuff at twitch.tv/TheAstroPub on Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, and soon Wednesdays as well. And you can also check out my capsules and office hours, like replays, on youtube.com/TheAstroPub Live, where we talk about the latest news, lore. I usually pull out some of these sections because they're like 4-hour-long streams into smaller little chunks, like the monthly reports, the roadmap roundups, maybe my own thoughts on certain things. So if you want to catch those. And of course, Captain's Tables on Saturdays and on twitch.tv/TheAstroPub and youtube.com/TheAstroPub Live. And I have that up there, which you'll see people like Tomato will be on it. You'll see other content creators on it. You do something very similar where we talk about a topic and kind of go in depth about it, and even take questions from the audience. And then if you really like lore, that's my other big thing. I have an entire YouTube channel dedicated to the lore of Star Citizen. It's called The AstroPub, or The Astro Historian is the name of it, The Astro Historian, and including a absolutely stupid idea of mine, which is to try to categorize the entire history of the Star Citizen universe.
Love it.
From the beginning of the lore to the current day in lore. I'm currently finished episode 3, and I've just now finished the 25th century, so the 2400s.
I got to go rewatch them again. Yeah. Very good series. Yeah. I'm going to link all this down below in the show notes, so make sure to check them out if you haven't already. Normally, we have a few questions to ask the guests after the show, and I'm supposed to do that before I give you your outro, but I forgot. So I'm going to give you a quick question because we only got one this week, okay. And then I'll let you go on your way. Do you think CIG might balance out sell prices for ship components or implement stolen goods mechanics for them, considering potentially high profits from stripping components from larger ships?
Yes.
You think they're going to rechange all of the prices on components?
Oh, for sure. They'll kind of relook at it. I think when 319 comes out, components are going to be very, very pricey, or at least become more valuable. And I do 100% believe that they will have stolen. They already have stolen tags. They already have like tags they can slap onto things. So I almost certainly will see stolen tags. But we also have locations like all the scrap yards are no questions asked terminals, and of course Grimhex. So you'll be able to go to those places and sell those off. I 100% believe you'll be able to, or at least there'll be a place where you can sell these materials. They wouldn't implement it without a means to make money off of it, because CIG just still understands this is a gameplay loop.
Yeah, it's going to be good. And then the Argo SRV comes and you can tow ships to the scrapyard and dismantle them. Oh, it's going to be fun stuff coming
baby.
Up. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you again for joining me today, folks. If you enjoyed this show, consider checking out our others. There's a playlist on my second YouTube channel, Space Tomato 2. We've also got the audio playlist. The audio podcast is ad-free on Spotify, Amazon, Apple, Google, wherever you're watching your podcasts or listening to them. You can also come in and join us live, asking questions, leaving little chats, talking to our guests. If you are a supporter, so Patreon, YouTube, or Ko-fi supporters, come and check us out. Usually we're here on Fridays. And that about does it. I got a video on the YouTube page about the star map. Go check that out because that's going to be that's a fun one. And that's it for this week. So once again, AstroPub, thank you so much for joining me. And
thanks for having me.
To all of you, viewers, listeners, lovely folks of the verse, thank you again for joining me as well. I'll see you all next week.
See you in the black.